In the gaming world, I always like to give the big evil corporations the benefit of the doubt. But recently, you can't really. So, let's talk about it. What's up, my fellow Dragodons? Dreadclaw here, and today I'm gonna be giving you my perspective on the whole EA motive situation that we've been seeing recently this week, and I'm gonna be honest, I was kind of surprised to see this direction for the studio. Seeing how well they did with the Dead Space remake, probably one of my favorite games out of 2023, up there with Pikmin 4 and Metroid Prime Remastered. It's kind of seen that the studio is shifting in a whole new direction with these quote-unquote lackluster sales from EA. Albeit, this is a simple thing when it comes to they probably had a bigger sales number they were hoping for to reach with the remake. And seeing how Dead Space was kind of leaning towards, okay, this needs to sell, otherwise we won't do anything with Dead Space. And to put another thing into the equation, the fact that that same year the Resident Evil 4 remake was coming out, even though I don't really care about Resident Evil 4 and just I didn't really care for it. I even tried the demo, just wasn't for me. It didn't really feel that scary. It felt more into the actions part of survival horror. That's not, again, my thing. And of course, that probably overshadowed it, and survival horror in itself is more of a niche genre when compared to years ago when you had the titans like Silent Hill back in its heyday, which hopefully the remake is good, Alone in the Dark, and many, many more of those survival horror games. So with seeing this, it's probably a dumb thing from the publisher, as now they are making motive work on the Battlefield games. Not to mention they're already working on an Iron Man game, which would explain a lot when it comes to the zero-G sections in the Dead Space remake, which weren't originally in the original. It was some kind of gravity jump, which honestly, the remake made me appreciate the original a bit more. Because since the remake had a lot of mechanics from Dead Space 2, which speaking of which, I was originally gonna do a video when it came to the Dead Space series where I think what direction they should go. In that video, I was gonna feel like, oh, they should just do a remaster for Dead Space 2, where it has like the graphical fidelity of those remake. And then, of course, do a reimagining of Dead Space 3, where it has an alternate ending. It's more on the horror side than it is just being like, oh, hey, here's Resident Evil 5. But in space. And it being very more action-oriented than Dead Space 2. Or even the first Dead Space. Then where I feel like, after they do that, Dead Space 4 full on after results of the sales of the remake. And this is what pissed me off the most seeing the news. The fact we were gonna have a Dead Space 2 remake. One of my all-time favorite Dead Space games, keep in mind, because it nails everything I want from Dead Space 1. The better gameplay, the atmosphere, how tense it is. I even love how the fact there is this alien creature that's kind of like the Velociraptors. There's even an achievement trophy called Clever Girl, which referenced to Jurassic Park, which I thought was really cool. But the fact we were going to get a remake of Dead Space 2, which I would have been fine with. I would have got it anyway, just because, again, all-time favorite survival horror game. But that got canned, that got shelved, and believe me, I was really pissed off. It's one of those fuck you EA moments where I'm like, I'm always leaning towards EA, especially with last year, they're putting out some good quality games. From both themselves and the EA original games they were publishing. But man, the fact they are making Motive Studio work on the Battlefield games now, it rubs me the wrong way. Especially when this reminded me a lot, if you're a Crash and Spyro fan, you went through the dark ages of recent years, where Crash 4 at the time didn't really perform that well, so Activision made Toys for Bob work on as a support team for Call of Duty. Which, yes, make the people behind things like Skylanders, Spyro Reignite Trilogy, Crash 4. Yes, make them work on a generic military shooter. These companies, I don't get them sometimes. Which I get from a sales perspective. Those types of games sell more. But in the end, you gotta have more than just shooters. So that gives me the same energy with the whole EA motive situation. So if Dead Space fans, you can kind of relate to what it's like to be a Crash and Spyro fan at the time. Which also, when it came to the whole thing with Toys for Bob, they shelved, at the time was called Wumpa League, now called Crash Team Rumble, and then potentially Spyro 4. It does raise that question for me, in my personal opinion. Do we really need another Battlefield game? I always ask this question sometimes on a daily basis, like, do we really need another Call of Duty? Do we need games like Halo, Titanfall, Battlefield? It's like, do we really need these kinds of games on a daily basis? This has been something as well, I've noticed more often when it comes to the whole shooter perspective. If you watch the Game Awards, I was just getting very fatigued, where everything was pretty much shooter, 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 open world, shooter, shooter, shooter. It just gets very tiring when pretty much anything new comes out is either a shooter or an open world game. But this video is more about the shooter perspective, where do we really need all these shooters to come out? Personally, for me, no, but hey, if you're someone who's into that genre, cool, more power to you. I just don't think we need all these big AAA studios to focus on just the typical generic military shooter, multiplayer-based shooters, etc. Especially when, Call of Duty, basically your typical generic military shooter. Then you have Halo, which to me is just, oh hey, it's Call of Duty, but in space. Battlefield, basically Call of Duty, but with vehicles. Titanfall, basically Call of Duty, but with mechs. It's like, to me, they don't really stand out. They look the same. They kind of more likely play the same. As my only experience with Battlefield was an open beta on the PS3. I want to say it was Battlefield 3 or something like that, where I didn't really get why people were hyped. Don't get why people buy these games every day. As well, you could say the same for sports games, but I don't think it's really like, oh my god, something that is a very more common thing to say when it comes to the yearly release, as sports games are just basically there. They exist, being the new fresh coat of paint, unless you're WWE 2K games, where graphically they look worse and worse every year. Or just like 2K20, where it's a buggy, broken, glitchy mess. But anyway, I fear for the worst when it comes to the Dead Space series now, since the series at this moment is on ice. It's really weird as well with Dead Space Remake not doing that well, considering I thought it was doing well, but hey, what do I know? I'm a gamer, I'm not the guy inside the gaming industry, so... And the fact they had a lot of raving reviews, one of the few games nowadays that doesn't have like any controversy tied to it too. But hey, I'm still holding out for hope when it comes to Dead Space. Hopefully things get sorted out with Motive. I hope things go well for them. And someday we'll actually get a Dead Space 4. I still would love to see that Dead Space 2 remake, because I would still love to see Motive's take on the game, even though I would probably prefer the original. But I still would love to see when it comes to what they have to do. Also, the other thing I want to put this out here, I don't hate shooters. I just feel like, do we need these types of games out on a daily basis? You know, your basic Call of Duty's, Battlefield, etc. Do we really need these games to come out all the time? No, not really. As of course, I'm someone who does occasionally play a shooter, but it's not like one of those genres where, oh, I need to go out of my way to get this. If it's something like BioShock, 100%. Metroid Prime, hell yeah. The more first-person, adventure-oriented games I always gravitate towards. When it comes to multiplayer shooters, or shooters in general, they have to stand out or be unique. I mean, heck, I used to play Splatoon because it was such a unique take on the shooter genre. And there was one, even Overwatch, which was unique at the time, and with Overwatch 2 having like its issues, it's not that great compared to its predecessor. But yes, generally, I don't hate shooters. I just don't go out of my way to play every one of them, and it has to really stand out. Just in case, I'm just saying that just in case someone would be like, I see you stream X game, but no, it's like, I just don't think we need a Call of Duty or those types of games on the daily basis. But yeah, that's my perspective on things. Do you think it was a big mistake on EA's end when it comes to this? Did you really think they have high perspectives? Or do you agree with the shooter opinion? Let me know in the comment section below. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.